Merry Christmas and welcome to another episode of Patriot to the Core podcast. I am your host, Thad Forrester. I hope you're having a great Christmas day. And if you've noticed today, I moved the episode up earlier a day. Normally it's on Monday, but due to our guest, Mr. Gail Halvorsen, the Candy Bomber, we moved it to today on Christmas Day, which it happens to be my favorite time of year. Before we get into talking with Mr. Halvorsen, I just want to ask you to please go to iTunes and rate the podcast. You can also rate it some other places too. I think iTunes is probably the most popular, but you can find us on Stitcher, on Google Play. I don't know, maybe some other places too. But you can also on my website find this and all other episodes at thadforster.com/the Candy Bomber for this episode. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to this. Mr. Halvorsen is a very inspirational guy. He just turned 96 in October. Full of life, full of positivity, just energetic, and I think he's still very active. So this is going to be a really good episode. I think you'll really enjoy it, especially for Christmas Day. What he did is known as Uncle Wiggly Wings or the Candy Bomber by dropping the candy to the children in Berlin there in 1948 and 49. It really got a lot of attention, and you'll see some links in the show notes. To a video that Tom Brokaw did with him, and he's got a book, and so there's all kinds of stuff. If you search for Mr. Halvorsen, Gail Halvorsen, or the Candy Bomber, you'll find tons of information about him, and you'll love the videos. You can also go to his website at wigglywings.weebly. That's WEEBLY. So wigglywings.weebly.com and find out more too. So I'll just get him on now. For joining me today.
My pleasure, my privilege.
I have, when I started this podcast, I had a short list of people that I wanted to talk to, and you're definitely one of the ones I wanted to talk to, and I had the idea, I'd love to do it for a Christmas special. So it's an honor to have you on Patriot to the Core. You are a man in pretty high demand, it seems. It seems like you travel all over to events, and seems like the media comes to you as well to interview you quite often.
Well, it's been interesting. For two sticks of gum, it sure changed my life.
Yeah, I'll say. I wanted to get into your, the Candy Bomber itself story, but one thing I want to ask you first is I read an interview where you shared how you first notified your parents that you were a pilot while they were working out in the field. Do you mind sharing that story?
Well, my parents somehow or other, they knew about it when they were aware of. I got my pilot license before the war. They knew about that then, and I had very little university before I went in the military. And before the war started, they had a competition for a free flight program, the culmination of which would be your private pilot license. And I wanted to watch the farm. It was a farm. I work in the field, watch the planes going overhead, and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to get out. The farm was a good life, but I want to get in the air. And so before the war, they started a non-college pilot training program the state of Utah, all over the United States. And the state of Utah, altogether there were about 160 young men going to night school to study the flight regulations and about flying, aerodynamics, and everything about the rules and regulations. And then they gave the private pilot test to the 100 and some, 50, 60, and gave 10 scholarships. And I studied, and I got one of the 10 scholarships. So my family were well aware of that and cheering me on. And I got my pilot license in about May of 1941. And the 10 of us in the state, we put in $50 each and bought an airplane. A Piper Cub with a 55 horsepower engine, So that's how I got started in aviation. That was before the Pearl Harbor.
Well, so you did you actually really do a buzz over your parents' farm?
Yeah, a little and a real buzz. I knew all about regulations, but on my first cross country before I got my license, I was on solo cross country. You got to do that as part of the training program. I went over the farm and at the required altitude and circled and gunned the engine back and forth. My big old black dog that chased airplanes, I could see him running down there, around the house. And the folks come out on the porch and I went back and went to Logan, Utah, and then went back to Brigham City, and it was good. But I didn't violate any flight regulations in the process.
Sure. Well, I thought that was a great story. Anyway, you got to see your home and see your dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty
In
cool.
the air. Yeah, that was really cool.
Well, I wanted to, if we could go fast forward a little bit to I guess it's got multiple names, the Operation Little Viddles, the Berlin airdrop, I guess. Will you explain what happened there and how, why those children touched your life and you did what you did?
Well, I got on the airlift by kind of an accident. I was single at the time, in 1948, when the blockade occurred, and my best friend that was married, and we were flying out of Mobile, Alabama, to South America. He'd give me dinner on Sunday morning. It was so good, and he was put in the list to go in the blockade, fly the airlift, and they hadn't been married too long, and I took his place. I volunteered to take his place. So I got on the airlift in kind of a fluke, and the Soviets got all the food to West Berlin, located deep inside of East Germany, and so I started flying the airlift and started. Larry Caskey, my dear friend, had been married a short time, and I didn't think the airlift would last very long, and so I wanted to get some movies of what it was like, and so I flew 3 round trips. This was about early July 1948. 3 round trips from Frankfurt, West Germany, supplies to Berlin. The King flew all night doing that. Came back to Frankfurt, supposed to go to bed, but I wanted to get movies. I thought the thing would be over pretty quick, so I just had my uniform, so I needed to get a flight on the airplane leaving every 5 minutes from West Germany. So I went back with my camera, took pictures of the kids at the end of the runway. I could leave the airplane because I just came as a passenger. And those kids on one side of the barbed wire and me on the inside, taking movies, and they talked to me in their German, in their pidgin English, and they learned enough to talk to me in English. And I was there for 1 hour, and out of those 30 kids lying on the barbed wire, not one of them, by voice inflection or body language, said, "Don't you know kids like chocolate?" Not one begged. And during the war, I'd flown in Africa and England and all around the place, and the kids that age knew Americans had chocolate. They had begging for chocolate. What struck me immediately was these kids hadn't had any chocolate for a couple of years where they could buy it. And not one of them for that hour when they stopped, not one said, "You got any chocolate?" Why? Because they're so grateful for flour to be free. They wouldn't ask for something so extravagant. So it's not me, it's those 30 kids at the barbed wire fence in Berlin who were so grateful, gratitude, grateful for flour, dried eggs, dried potatoes, dried everything could be dried, and grateful for the chance to be free, that not one would be a beggar. That was a lesson that stuck with me the rest of my life. Well, because they didn't, I didn't have any chocolate to give them. 2 sticks of gum, felt in my pocket, and all I had was 2 sticks of gum. Says, "Get out of here, you'll have a 5 bloody nose." But I said, "You'll never see him again. He'll be flying. He you should be in bed, but in West Germany. And that's the only way I get out the fence to take my sleep time to hitchhike to Berlin. You never see him again. Give him what you got. I started turning back the fence, broken into 4 pieces through the barbed wire. And it wasn't a fight. Little boys and girls, 8 to 15, watching. And they were so grateful that they just didn't, the kids that didn't get any half-stick of gum wanted a piece of wrapper to smell. So I tore off pieces of wrapper and passed it to the rest of them. And so they smelled puffy noses, just smelled a piece of wrapper, and their eyes got big. Well, I thought for a few bucks I could drop enough gum and chocolate for all of them to have some. And I knew then it was against regulations, and I was stickler for regulations, but I found myself saying, come back tomorrow in this open place. When I come over, just over your head's the land, when you're still on the other side of the West Berlin side of the barbed wire, I'll drop enough of you stuff for you to share it. They said, jawohl, to share it. They said, how do we know what airplane you're in? I said, well, when I come over to Berlin the first time over the radio fix, Wiggly Wings, that's my airplane. Just watch that one. That's the one that's got it. So that's what happened. Came back the next day. They hadn't told another soul about the same 30 kids standing out in the open just before the barbed wire fence. I wiggled the wings and they just went crazy. And pushed it out. Had 3 parachutes with chocolate bars and Wrigley supplement gum, and enough for everybody to have some. Pushed it out the flare chute just before it landed. There's a opening in the bottom of the airplane to drop flares out of. And just before I landed, I pushed it out. Couldn't tell if I hit him or pulled it on the runway. But we unloaded 20,000 pounds of flour and taxied out, take off right past the end where we had dropped it. There on the barbed wire with all 30 kids, hands waving through the barbed wire, 3 parachutes, 3 handkerchief parachutes, waving to all the airplanes. The miles were going up and down. Well, the end result was months later, we'd dropped, we'd given them 23 tons of candy, 20 tons by air, and the other 3 tons at Christmas time distributed to all the orphanages in West Berlin at Christmas time. The letters were coming like crazy with instructions and maps on where to drop it. So that was the thing that my buddy started doing it. Kids in East Berlin wrote, we can't help it. We're here back with the Russians. We haven't got any chocolate either. So I said, well, the kids are kids. The heck with the politics. So I started dropping some parachutes in East Berlin, where the kids wrote me where they would be in the park. I did that for 2 weeks, two drops, 2 big drops. And I got a call from the Air Force commander. He says, what are you doing over Berlin? I said, I'm flying like mad. He says, what are you doing over East Berlin? And I said, well, I'm dropping those nasty communist kids. He said, you can't do that. And I said, the law of gravity is on both sides of the border. It's the same on both sides of the border. He said, that's not the problem. He says, the Soviets have claimed to the State Department it's a dirty capitalist trick. You're trying to influence the minds of these young people against their regime. You got to stop. Well, for 2 sticks of gum in 1948, I was in the space program after that. They sent me back, the Air Force sent me back to school, and I got a permanent commission, and they sent me back to school. And went to the space program, and they got called to go. The kids had grown up, told their kids about it, and they wanted me to come by and drop parachutes to the kids used to catch them. And so in 1970, I dropped out of the space program in L.A., Inglewood, and went to Berlin for a week and dropped parachutes to the kids that used to catch them over at Tempelhof Air Base.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Then I went back to the space program, and a few months later, I got a call from the Pentagon that said, Halvorsen, you're going to be reassigned. I don't want to be reassigned. I want to stay in the space program. I was commander of a huge satellite tracking station. They said, I'm happy where I'm at. If you got no choice, the commander of Berlin said the general says he wants you in Berlin to be the new commander that replaces Clark Tate, the present commander. The Germans have come to me and they just almost demand that you come as a new commander. Well, anyway, I had no choice. So out of the space program, I went back to Berlin for 2-6 again for 4 years, and met the kids that grown up and their kids, and we had open houses and airdrops for their kids, like the kids that used to catch. The longest the commander had been in Berlin was 2 years and 11 months, since 1945 until 1970, and I was there for. They asked me to stay for 4. I was there 4 years. Met tons of the kids that used the little girl Mercedes, you know all about her. And it says, when you see the white chickens drop it there, I don't care if it scares. Well, we got to know Mercedes, and after years later, they seen her husband and kids came to visit Utah.
Okay, I got a few questions for you. So first of all, did Wrigley's ever donate a lot of gum or candy to you or to the mission?
Tons and tons.
Okay.
I got 23 tons. It was 23 tons, and all the candy companies did. Wrigley's, Hershey's, tons of Hershey's.
Okay.
Well, I couldn't. We dropped it all by parachute except 3 tons. 3 tons was Christmas parties on the ground in West Berlin. But I had a Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts. When the confectioneers, the president of the Confectioneers Association, got a hold of me and said, Halvorsen, we'll give you all the stuff you need to drop. And he's president of the whole Confectioneers Association. And he says, how much can you use? And I told him, that ended up finally being 23 tons. But the airdrops, all my buddies were dropping. So Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, to get back where it was, the school system in Chicopee wrote me a letter. I couldn't tie out the parachutes naturally. So they said, look, I know you got a problem. Yeah. Up to that point, when we got more people were donating on the base in Germany and giving me stuff, but this was coming to the States, a heavy body, lifting a heavy amount of air. And they said, Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, said, we'll tie up all your parachutes. Have the candy company send it all to us. We'll tie up the parachutes, put in the cardboard boxes, ready to drop. All you got to do is cut the tops off. And that's what happened, the 20 tons up. And my buddies were already dropping. I got it started, but we dropped all over West Berlin. And, of course, I told you about the ones we dropped in East Berlin.
Yeah.
But there were tons and tons. There was lots of letters, many letters, with maps, school kids. And Peter Zimmerman wrote me a letter to say, you're giving us a hard, Mercedes Wiles, not Peter. Peter gave me a letter too, but she says, you're giving us a terrible problem. She says, we got chickens, and we're on the end of the runway, and not far, and they think you're a chicken hawk, and when you fly over, they run in the chicken coop and they're losing their feathers, and they're not laying eggs very good. And that's a problem during the blockade. She chewed me out, this little 7-year-old girl. And then the last paragraph was, when you see the white chickens, drop it there. I don't care if it scares them. Well, I couldn't find her white chickens. So I took a big package of chocolate bars and town candy. I had her letter. I mailed it to Mercedes-Ville in Berlin. And it ended up after the war that they came to my house in Utah and their family.
Oh, that's great. So one question I have, Mr. Halvorsen, is how did you get, at least initially, did you have other people in the plane, or how were you getting the candy out of the plane?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, our airdrops at first were low over the kids and we were meeting. So we had to be flying the airplane. So there's 3 men on the crew. I was the pilot, and I had a co-pilot and a flight engineer. And the flight engineer is between the 2 pilots, making sure that everything's all right. And right underneath the seat almost, of the crew chief standing up between the pilots. There's a hole in the fuselage, a stovepipe, like a stovepipe. These airplanes were not pressurized. A hole just right through from the back of the cockpit outside the airplane, the size of a large stovepipe. And the purpose for that design was, if you had trouble at night, you're losing the engine, and you had to make a crash landing at night, you'd drop a flare out of that chute, and it was on a parachute, and it would light up the whole side, and you land in the guy's in the farmer's field instead of his house. It's a flare chute. And it also for signals during the war, they dropped signals out that thing. So that was perfect.
Okay.
So I gave it to crew chief, and I said, I had my arm up. I said, when I bring my arm up, shove it out the parachute, out the flare chute. That's how we dropped it. But later on, we quit dropping on the end of the runway because the crowd got too big. We thought kids get hurt. So we dropped all around the city of West Berlin. We had a map of the whole city. We'd get all this candy and give it to already packaged and cardboard box. We didn't even have to tie up any of it. It came up tied from the States. And then we had a map. We had a target map. And when somebody would drop it at one place, we'd put a pin there and then we'd move it around all over the West Berlin. The kids were let in give detailed instructions. When you take off, the second railroad bridge, turn right 1 block. I'll be in 1 block behind that bridge, and I'll be there every day at 2 o'clock. Drop it there. We tried to make special deliveries where we could, but where we couldn't, like with Mercedes, I mailed it to her. We had a whole press crew, a whole people who were helping answer the mail. We couldn't answer all the mail.
I'm sure.
We had people answer the mail.
Well, you couldn't even answer all of your proposals for women back in the States either, could
you? Yeah, they even though I was bald-headed, I got quite a few offers. It was crazy. It was fun, but I had one special gal back home, and I let him know that I'm sorry, I'm already got plans. That was jolly.
Wow. Well, one thing you said is you said, the children, they taught you about freedom. We explain what you mean by that. I know you did a little bit, but is there any more to that?
Well, the children there had seen what happened in the dictatorship. And during the reign of Hitler, there were terrible things done to people raised in opposition. And so even early on in their lives, seeing what the dictatorship was like. And then the most significant thing was when they drew the artificial border around Berlin, the British, French, and Soviet and American sectors, and out of Berlin, those divisions in the city of Berlin. And they have aunts and uncles in the Soviet sector. Of course, the city of Berlin was just cut up into 4 pieces. And those people in the Soviet control had aunts and uncles just across the artificial border in the British, French, and American sectors. And those people would walk over across the border when this thing first started to see what it was like before the blockade, and the British and French and Americans were giving them the Germans leeway to get leadership going. They helped them get capitalist businesses going. They had more, so the kids and people in East Berlin who walked across the border, it was like day and night, right in the same city. What freedom people could choose. They fixed up their bombed out houses, what they could. And now so in the East, they're waiting for the communist government to fix the houses. And the contrast was black and white. The communism versus freedom was across an open road at that time before they put the wall up. And that's why they put the wall up. The contrast was so much that the Germans were just hoping they could get out of the communist rule. And the wall went up to keep them out. So that was freedom versus communism, right in the middle of the city of Berlin. And the contrast, Stalin couldn't compete. Here was a showcase in one place. It was from one side of the street to the other. It was stark. It's incredibly different. And this system was exposed right there into the world. And they couldn't take the competition. That's why they cut off the supplies coming across East Berlin to West Germany and west of Berlin.
So what were the risks in doing these candy drops?
Well, the risk, we didn't alter our flight patterns at all. When we come into Berlin, you had to make a big circle to get in the traffic pattern. So we dropped all over the city. The only risk that I had is when I did it without permission. I almost got court-martialed, and I knew I wasn't supposed to do that. So there were no risks except what there was the Soviets did. In bad weather, they jammed some of our navigation stations. But that wasn't because of the candy drop. They didn't like it. They made official protest to Washington about that. But about no risk to the crews in driving them. And when we dropped all at altitude coming around the city, we'd send our crew chiefs back. The airplane, the C-54, which did almost all the work for the Americans, had 2 escape hatches, two on each side. And because of the flour dust, the coal dust, because all the stuff were flying, we flew with those escape hatches out, big enough to get people out. The escape hatch was big enough somebody to crawl through. So we flew with all 4 of those out, to suck out all the dust that was getting under the floorboards and the controls. So after a while, when the crowd got too big on the end of the runway, we would send back the crew chief and cut the tops out of these cardboard boxes with handholds halfway down the big cardboard box and just push it up against that escape hatch, and that the wind stream would suck it out of that escape hatch, and parachutes would fly all over, just scattered all over the wind. And that's how we did it. And that's how we dropped 20 tons. And as I said, we had lots of our guys doing it. When we got all the supplies, I had a map in the operations in Frankfurt, Rhine-Main, and Wiesbaden, in the West Germany. And when the pilots would go out, they'd put a pin. When they came back, they'd put a pin where they dropped in Berlin, West Berlin, and we'd move it all around, dropping it because we made a circle in East Berlin, West Berlin over East Berlin, and West Berlin back to land. And so that's how we distributed it. We just my buddies. Of course, everybody participated in my outfit.
Wow. So now, simple things amuse me. So I know that you used handkerchiefs at first, but when you started dropping a lot of candy, what were the parachutes made out of?
Well, old light canvas. The canvas companies in the East Coast provided all we wanted, and the Chicopee, Massachusetts had the assembly line, and they just cut these up a little bit bigger than the man's handkerchief, and the string companies that made string sent all we needed. Canvas guys sent all we had to have, and the kids in Chicopee would tie it up and roll it. Take the parachute apex and roll it down into the candy, and stack it in a discrete bundle, and put it in these cardboard boxes so it clear out. And so when we cut out the top and check it up, when the crew chief would check it up against the escape hatch, it'd come out like a vacuum, and immediately the little parachutes would slide open, and then the wind would scatter it over a huge area.
Okay. Yeah, I've been wondering that. When I was a kid, one of my most favorite toys was some little superheroes that had a plastic parachute. And
I've seen those.
yeah, and I couldn't find one. I've never found any like that since, but they were really good. And so, yeah, I loved either climbing a tree and dropping it or just throwing it in there and letting it fall down.
That's right. I got started with this thing before the war when I got the flight scholarship I told you about. And so one of the places and we bought that airplane, like I said, and we could rotate on who had it when. And I used to live on the farm up in the Rigby, Idaho, before I got in the 7th grade and went to Utah. And I had some dear friends up there. So this was before the war, before the blockade and anything. And I'd fly over there, and then I'd tied a parachute under a candy bar and dropped it to my best buddy up there in Idaho, Rigby, Idaho. Harold Dowdle. Harold Dowdle was my buddy that I'd grown up through the 6th grade with in Rigby, Idaho. And so I come over to his house, and I couldn't land up there. Didn't have an airport, so I dropped him. My first experience before the war was dropping the parachute to Harold Dowdle in Rigby, Idaho.
That's cool. Well, Mr. Halvorsen, what did you ever have any hesitancy or reservations to do this with the kids?
Yeah, I was a very conservative guy and a conservative pilot, and I had a real struggle. But when I saw those kids' reaction to 2 sticks of gum, to 4 pieces, and the look in their eye, I just said, I got to do it. I just had a voice that you got to continue. You got to take the chance. And I could have been court-martialed, but I got a telephone call from the office of General Tunner. He said, like I said before, what are you doing? And dropping nasty on these kids. And then I thought I was going to get it then, but then he said, the General says, so you keep doing it. So I was, but the urge, if anybody has seen the reaction of children just smelling a piece of the wrapper of gum, and thinking back to years before when they had sweets, and see the look in their eye, Scrooge would have done it. No, it's not me. It was the children that made it happen because gratitude. They taught me several prime. Excuse me, I had to sneeze.
It's okay.
But in that experience, those kids, what they taught me was what's important. Gratitude. Attitude, the attitude, look, we don't have, first of all, attitude. They taught me, we don't have to have enough to eat, they said. Just don't give up. See, excuse me. They said, just don't give up on us. Someday we're going to have enough to eat. But if we lose our freedom, we'll never get it back. They knew what was freedom like. Their neighbors, their cousins, their aunts or uncles on the other side of the border in East Berlin. We don't have to have enough. Don't give up on us. Someday we'll have enough to eat. But if we lose our freedom, we'll never get it back. Kids, 8 to 15. Okay, attitude. That's demonstrating the attitude. Some philosopher said one time, and it applies to this case. A person can, if they will, control 95% of how they react to a situation. You get ulcers, or you cope, or you find an alternate solution. 95%. The other 5%, Schopenhauer said this, something. Schopenhauer, I believe it was. The other 5%, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. So attitude was the principal factor. Gratitude. The I explained the gratitude. So grateful for Flier to be free. They wouldn't ask for candy or gum. Attitude, gratitude, service before self. By getting out, the only way to true happiness is getting outside yourself, on behalf of somebody else. And so,
did you grow up in a house like that, Mr. Halvorsen? Did you grow up in a family where?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We lived on this farm. I was the only horse my dad had. Well, he had horses. He didn't have a tractor. But that was the things they taught me at my mother and dad's knee. That attitude, gratitude, serving others. We had this small farm compared to most guys around us, and we get, first of all, it helped Dad get the sugar beet food and get everything going, and then the neighbor needed help. We didn't have any money to pay for it. They give us produce or something, and Dad said, "Go help them get their sugar beets fed," and it was part of the culture. Nobody had much money, and so attitude, gratitude, service before self. Service is the only true way to get total happiness. And here I was, again, before the war, going back to that airplane we bought for $500. The war was coming. Every young guy wanted to learn how to fly. And of course, I had 35 hours, so I was an expert. I just got my life. So my best friend, Conrad Steffen from Tremont, I was from Garland, Utah. Conrad Steffen from Tremont, one of the best buddies, about my same age, says, "Look, Hal, I want to learn to see if I just fly. I'm going to go in the military. I want to see how to go in the Army Air Corps." And so he bought the gas. And I got a lot of flying time with somebody else paying the gas. I didn't have any money for gas. And I taught Conrad how to fly officially, and they couldn't give him a license. But at Pearl Harbor, Conrad joined the Army Air Corps immediately, and he trained as a fighter pilot. He was sent to England to escort the B-17 bombers over Germany. The Germans shot him down and killed my best friend. And I felt guilt. I felt a terrible guilt because I got him going. But I kept saying, "Look, he's going to learn from somebody. You can't take it that way." So I had service before self, by serving. I knew the only way I broke that really blockade in my heart was to look at the eyes of the kids when he opened up a chocolate bar wrapper, or the way they waved that thing, and knowing that it wasn't the kids that was the problem. It was the director. It was the dictator Hitler. It was the people that were over them.
Yeah. And
that was the thing that I had a terrible block to overcome there. Of course, Conrad Steffen. That was tough. But attitude, gratitude, service before self, it solves a lot of psychological problems. And the other factor was the little decisions you make in life. This is part of the quote out of the Book of Mormon. Little decisions you make in your life put your footsteps on the path to where you end up. And that little decision, and how do you get that? We use GPS today. We didn't have it then. But our personal GPS, we use the Holy Ghost. It prompts you to do this or don't do that. And it gets you headed on whatever decision you make puts you on the path where you end up. So those are the factors that the kids really have been taught that. I've been taught those principles, but I saw them in action and through the eyes of 8 to 15-year-olds. It changed my life totally.
Yeah, thank you. That's powerful. And you've been fortunate enough to meet several of these children, or the ones that were children then, years later. So from their perspective, what type of impact did this have on them?
Well, when I went back as commander, I met hundreds of people who are now adults, experienced lots and lots of them. And the thing that touches my heart today is when I hear from her through the years, to hear those that expressed their gratitude for the 31 Americans and 41 British gave their lives for the enemy. They were killed during the blockade in air crashes. So 31 Americans and 41, 30, and the 41 Brits gave their lives to former enemy. One of my buddies, Bomberlin, during the war, I lived in the attic of a barn. In the attic of a barn, there was no room in the inn when I got to the airlift. And we lived in the attic of a barn. And that one buddy says, he was Bomberlin. I says, how do you feel about coming back here now? You just, after the war, you got married, you got a couple of kids, and all of a sudden they call you up and say, in 4 days you're leaving for Berlin and to feed the guys that tried to kill you. I said, how do you feel about that? And he says, a hell of a lot better to feed them than just to kill them. I'm glad to be back.
Wow. That'd be tough.
That's what,
wow.
Oh, yeah, but service before self. And he's serving the guys that tried to kill him. And those are power. Attitude, gratitude, service before self, and a little decision, put your footsteps on where you end up, whatever that is.
Yeah, so what would your life be like now, or where would your life, what path would it have taken if you hadn't joined the military?
Well, that's a good question. I wanted to fly because way before the war, and after I got out of high school, saw the airplanes flying over the field and flying. I wanted to learn to fly. I didn't know how I could ever do it, but I was going to figure out I wanted to be a pilot. I read a book about a cowboy, and I don't forget the name of the book, but it was when I was in high school, early in high school. I read this book about a cowboy that found an airplane out in the desert, and the pilot probably tried to hike in. He had the emergency land on the road and had to try to hike somewhere a long way from anywhere and died. And every airplane found it, and he taught himself how to fly. And I just loved that book. And so I had that bug in me from even before high school when I read that book. And what would have happened to me? I'm technically oriented. During high school, I didn't see how you could go to college. We had no money. Folks didn't. I'd work for the neighbors for money to just buy things for me, and I didn't see any way that I could make it. So when I was junior in high school, a traveling salesman come by Garland, Utah, and knocked on my door and selling a correspondence course in refrigeration and air conditioning. It says you can get a degree, not a degree, you can get a certificate to fix refrigeration equipment here by correspondence. And when you finish the correspondence course, you don't have enough, we'll put enough money in, it'll take you 2 years to do this course. And by paying the monthly payments will be enough saved that will buy you a bus ticket from Utah to Chicago, where we have the lab. And when you fill all these volumes of homework on how to refrigeration, the physics behind it and the mechanics of it, and then you can finish that satisfactorily, then we'll buy your bus ticket and put you up in a dormitory with some other guys in Chicago to work in our labs to get a hands-on experience. So that's what I did, and what would I've done now? Because of that, a Western Auto Store in Tremont, Utah, says we'll give you a job when you get out to fix refrigerators for us. And so that's what I was starting out to do. But then we got that flight scholarship there, all just at the same time, and so I would probably ended up getting a franchise for a Western Auto Store, and because I was during the high school, I'd sell stuff out of catalogs to people around town, and so I thought that's where I was headed. I would have had a dealership for a Western Auto store, and I had enough skill, I think, by working for the store there, and when it, off and on, and right after I graduated from high school, I was full time in the store for quite a while, and I knew how to merchandise it, I knew how to handle the inventory, I knew all about it. So that's where I would have ended up. I would got into, if it hadn't been for getting the pilot scholarship, I probably ended up with a Western Auto store dealer.
Interesting. Yeah, I used to visit Western Auto with my dad when I was little, all the time.
My gosh!
Get parts for my bike.
I love the smell of that store. That's where I likely ended up. My good friend is in the Western Auto store.
Well, how did this, this whole experience in Berlin, how did it change your life?
Well, it changed my life because it became an international involvement. It was enriching. When I was the commander of Temple for 4 years, we worked very closely on all American resources, military resources, except for a special unit or two under me, and we would work with the British and the French embassies, and it was a totally new environment for a farm kid that didn't have a toilet in the house. We got it halfway through high school. Had a Mercedes Benz and a driver for it. Had a gardener. Had a maid in the house, and it was unbelievable. I think to answer your question is, I became aware of the international scope of things in the world, respect for other nations and their problems they have, and what they have to do to meet obligations, and that directly honed my appreciation of the United States of America and the respect that the other countries had for us, and the joint effort, jointly working with others in the Air Force. I enjoyed the cutting edge of the space program most of my career. The cutting edge of space. And was in charge of developing a new space booster for the Air Force and writing the plans for it, and they were accepted. And we got the Titan III, the space launch vehicle. It was a Titan II ICBM core, and we tied two large rocket motors, one on each side of it, put a huge payload, a manned orbital vehicle in orbit. And so I didn't want to leave that when they cast me back to Commander Temple off in 1970. I was knee deep in the space program. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay where I was, but they said, Halvorsen, the Air Force wants you in Berlin. The Berliners want you there. You're going.
Well, Mr. Halvorsen, you turned 96 years old recently, I do believe. Last month, I think.
You bet. October, yeah.
That's incredible. I would like to ask you, what advice would you or do you give to people who are struggling, maybe with depression or anxiety, or maybe even those especially military-related, the post-traumatic stress and that type of thing?
Well, I think the bottom line, and very straight to the point, you got to get outside yourself. You're Berlin blockaded individually. Personally, you can be blockaded like the people in Berlin were if you don't get outside yourself. You got to be concerned about somebody besides yourself. And the bigger percent you're concerned about somebody else, the less you're going to sit and worry about how bad things are, or your own personal development. it's just that simple. And that it taught me in primary in the church those principles when I was just a little kid. My dad and mom, of course, but the simple and succinct and to the point. Get outside yourself on behalf of a good cause
Okay.
that affects others.
What's your perspective of the current state of affairs right now in our world?
Well, I'm very much concerned about it, of course. It's all across the globe, though, keep track of the hot spots. And it's all the friction is caused by the desires of somebody to take over the lives of others, to not be appreciative of what they've got, but they're trying to change according to their own theory of, and which isn't always from the best teachers. It's tough, and I think the one thing we've got that we haven't had before is the plethora of communications that are available. And so the first level of trying to help things out is to get the word out the best we can, and not to put down other people. You start putting them down first before you try to give them something. You put them down first, and you've got them on the defensive. But we need by better human relations, better communications, to understand others before we judge them, and then to see how we can affect. Well, the United States is incredible in that way. They're helping people all over the world in different areas, from Africa to all over the place. They're getting outside of the country, and that's one of our strengths as a nation. It translates from an individual in helping others to a nation that helps others. And there's no other nation on earth in the United States that has done so much to help others outside our borders. And that's one of our reasons for vibrancy in the United States, and what makes us so different. But personal experiences translates to national level and the same kind of principles.
Well, talking about the United States, providing aid to so many people all over the world, I know you've been in leadership roles and lay positions in the LDS Church. Were you ever involved directly with any of the humanitarian efforts throughout the world with the LDS Church?
Oh yeah, we've helped package. We on a regular basis we go to their warehouses and package up materials for people in South America or other places, kits from parts of the world where the church got missionaries all over the world, some places, and the needs are evaluated through our missionaries and what the people in that country, whether it's England, I served a mission in England, I served a mission in Russia, I served a mission locally to help people that need help, and it's going on today with the LDS Church has got welfare farms all over the place, and I've worked on welfare farms, whether it's sugar beets to get sugar to ship to people in other countries that need it, or potatoes, or wheat, a lot of wheat, and we bring all these things into the bishop's storehouse and into all over the West and the East too, and they package this stuff for people in other countries, and maybe a lot of times it's not just people with the LDS faith. That's where a terrible catastrophe happens, and they have huge organization to get stuff down to South America where a hurricane hit or something like that. It's an exemplification of giving instead of taking, and we've worked. My family has worked with people at these assembly points to assemble the kits, that first aid kits, medical kits, food. Well, sometimes still some dried, but to get the most where it's needed, but you just put water in it. But it's a tenet of what I was taught at my dad and mom's knee as a kid, that go help your neighbor. When you get beach thinned here, go over and help both the Schofields. They still got something to do, and they haven't got money to pay anybody. And it's maybe oversimplified, but the factors that I gave you, I think if we apply them in our daily lives, and the example of their Savior, and he gave his life, true happiness, you can't get it unless you give.
Yeah, I agree. That's great advice. I really appreciate it. Mr. Halvorsen, anything in closing that you'd like to say?
No, I just expect to express my gratitude for being in the United States of America, and to the Republic with the flag that flies over our heads, what it means. The patriots have gone before, have given us water from wells we haven't dug. These patriots have given us skies of blue unmarked by the contrails of enemy aircraft. And they give us harbors that harbor friendly ships that serve others besides ourselves. So what I gained from that is just what I iterated. That there's no other country in the world like it. We're in a really tough stretch right now with the diversity we've got and the leadership potentials and what people expect or want. But we've got a recent constitution was established. We've got the Senate and the House. It's not in one person's hands.
Yeah.
And that's where our strength, our difference in our strength comes from. And that's what we've got to rely on to get us through this period of problems we have right now as far as unity is concerned on leadership.
Well, it's been a pleasure, and you have been. I know you were featured in the movie called Meet the Mormons. Came out. I forgot how long ago that was, but less than a year ago, anyway.
Yeah, right.
And you've been, Tom Brokaw did a great special with you in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir one year. You're easy to find, but really, where do you direct people when they ask, how can I learn more about you?
Well, the local missionaries, they're young men at 18, take 2 years of their life to forget about the pursuit of self-gratification, to go out and help people that are lost as far as what they want to do or what they want to believe. And these young women go out a couple of years to 21, and they're called, and they go out and they're very effective in trying to help others. Right back to the basics that I talked about. Their information and of course the Savior's example of service is unsurpassed. But as we approach that, the enormity of his service, as the scale gets closer, we think about somebody else, our lives are going to be improved, are going to be changed. So and his love of this has to be respect for the rights of others to choose, and not be judgmental. And that's why we're on the earth, because we're down here to choose, make choices, to grow and develop. And the last thing that we want to get involved with is to seeing other people are bad. Other countries are not as good as we are. they are born under circumstances that we can't comprehend. So we got first step is to respect the rights of others to choose, and say you're on the wrong track. So that's not our role. That's not our role to judge. If we can get away from judging people and saying, hey, we got to fix your situation. But enlightenment, give them an opportunity to open the door, and respect. That's why we're here, to make a choice, and we're not the ones to judge the results of those choices.
That's true. Well, much respect to you, sir. I thank you not only for your time with me today, but for your service, many years of service to this country, and then also your lifelong, career, your life of service to so many, both here and abroad. And you really are a great example of patriotism and selflessness. And by the way, how many how many I know you know how many kids and grandkids and great grandchildren do you have?
Yeah, I've got 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. I've got 24 grandchildren. I've got 43 great-grandchildren as of today. And one of the things I didn't mention is when my wife and I were called on the mission to go to Russia, I explained to the church authorities calling us that they know about me. I was working against in my way in the Air Force. I was assigned to tasks, and you better think again whether I should go to Russia. And we did. We went to St. Petersburg for 18 months. And the church had a wonderful ward in Berlin. Not Berlin, in St. Petersburg, Russia. And there I was, and we go out to visit different districts in the train, sometimes in the evening to give lessons. And the train would be jammed, and half of them were Soviet soldiers, all still in uniform, and they were the guys, former enemy, just like the Germans were. And we found that the people are the same. The desire is what they want. Got some very strong leaders of the church, Russians, and the Soviet Union. So one not long after we got signed there, we came into the mission home in St. Petersburg, and President Rogers from BYU was mission president, and he was a linguist, taught Russian at Brigham Young University, and we in his home, and we had in the leaders, the different churches around St. Petersburg for a monthly discussion of a special message from Salt Lake to them each month. And the first time I met in that group in the mission home, President Rogers introduced me to a Soviet Russian, and there was a branch president of the church. The branch is a small unit in the ward. The branch president introduced me to it, said, I've got somebody I want to meet here. And I introduced myself to him, and then President Rogers said he was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Army. And I said, oh my God. And I talked to him and said, oh my gosh, what did you do as a Soviet Army officer during the Cold War? And he said, well, I was in charge of exercises to train our troops. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, well, on the tanks, in case the tanks were coming from the west to Russia, we would take a tank and put a white star on it and start it out and blow the hell out of it. And I said, well, I think we did this. The Army might have done the same thing here. We might have painted a red star on the tank in our Army exercises. But it was incredible to me to stand there with the person that was one of them in charge of the Cold War and how he going to get to it, and now a friend and the common goal of serving others. That was the highlight for me.
Oh, Yeah, I know you have to go, but could I ask you, did you have any struggles either when you first were called and found out you were going to Russia to serve a mission, or maybe once you got there? Any problems at all with just internally with, being with the former enemy?
Well, at first it was a shock to me. I just that they said that there was a CES mission, Church Education System, job to do, and that was to teach the teachers, to teach the Russian, the Soviet teachers of the different classes every month what the new lessons would be for the next month. Well, to get back to your question, I was somewhat concerned. I was concerned, and I expressed that concern. That to my church leaders, I said, I don't know how this. They probably know. They must know who I am. I'd rather have you reconsider it and call me back. And I got a call next week that says, Brother Halvorsen, we've gone over this in headquarters, and we think that the good Lord will take care of you, and go ahead and do it. And so we did, and we had wonderful success. We worked with missionaries, and we were the ones that gave all the teachers and for their Tuesday night mutual every Tuesday night for the young people in the church worldwide. They have a special night for the young people, and they have a lesson, and so we trained the teachers. They're all Russian, all Soviet teachers. What the lesson would be for the next month, and meet with them every month. It was a wonderful experience.
I'm sure it was. Well, the Lord knows what He's doing.
Yeah.
In the show notes of this podcast, I will direct people to your website. I believe it is.
Oh, good.
WigglyWings.weebly. So that's Wiggly Wings and then .weebly.
Yeah, two G's on the Wiggly at Gmail. No. Wiggly Wings at WigglyWings.weebly.com. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Appreciate it.
Well, it's been an honor. Thank you for your time, and I will. For you listeners out there, please, if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it. Go to iTunes and rate the podcast. Preferably 5 stars. Give us a review. You can find us also on Google. What's it called? Google Play, and also on Stitcher. So please go rate us and follow us.
You got my email.
Yes, sir. I've got it, and I will email you. I'll email you that when this is going to launch out for Christmas.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that'd be great. I'd sure like to have a copy of it.
Well, sure, you'll be able to download it.
Okay.
I can talk.
Good.
Talk to you as we get closer to help you with that.
Yeah. Okay. Been an honor to talk to you. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too, sir. Have a good evening.
Another Christmas day will come and go away, and I've got so far to go, but I want to go home. I need to go home. Maybe surrounded by strangers and Christmas lights, I shouldn't feel so alone, but I want to go home. God, I miss you, you know. I can close my eyes and see the angel on the tree, a blanket of snow outside, and all my friends and family. And though I know that you're no further than a call away, I need to see your face. A call could never be the same. Another Christmas day will come and go away, and I won't leave you alone. No, I want to go home. I've got to go home. Let me go home. whatever they need me for. I know that I need you more. So I'll do the things I've gotta do to get back to you. I need you to believe I'll make it back by Christmas Eve. Another Christmas day will come and go away, and I won't leave you alone. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna be home. Though I'm surrounded by this cold December night and feel so alone, I'm gonna go home. Babe, I miss you, you know. Let me go home. I've had my run, baby, I'm done. I'm coming back home. Let me go home. It'll all be alright, and I'm holding you tight, 'cause this Christmas I'm home.